Hello everyone, my name is Jonas. This is my podcast. Today I start to read book 12 Rules for Life. The writer is Jordan B. Patterson. Alright, let's go. Rules, more rules. Really? Isn't life is complicated enough? Resisting enough. Without abstracted rules that don't take in your unique. The individual situations into account. And given that your brains are plastic and they all develop different based in your life experience. Why even expected that few roles might be helpful to use all. People don't clamor for roles. Even in Bible was when Moses come down the mountain after a long abstinence to bring the tables to inscribe them with 10 commandments and defines the children of Israel relevantly. They had been Pharaoh slaves that subjective his tyrannical regulation for 100 years. And after Moses subjected them when they hard desert wilderness for another 14 years to perfect when their slaveness no free at last. They umbrelled and have lost all control. They dance wielding around the idol, a golden calf, displaying all manner of corporal corruption. I've got good news, and I've got some bad news. When liar given wills to win, which do you want first? We the good news. Dedan's reply. I got him in the 14, 15 commandments to down to 10. Alleluia. The crescent throne. Anti-bad. Adultery still in. Rulers there will be, but blasphemy not many. We are ambivalent about rules, even when we know they are the good for us. If you are spirited souls, if you haven't character rules, sin restrictive and affording to your sense to agents and your pride in working on lives, why should we be judged according to another rule? And judged we were after all. God didn't give Moses and the 10 suggestions. We given commandments and if and a free agent. And my first reason to commanding might just be a nobody, not even God. And it tells me what to do, even it feels good for me. But the story of the golden calf also reminds us that without rulers quicken become slaves in your passions, and there's nothing thrilling about that. And the story suggests something more incorporated the last one into the judgment. We are quick to allow worship qualities that are banned use. And this is the case in your artificial animal that brings on the animal stunts in completely regulated way. The world ever starts making it clear how the accident feel about your prospective on civilization behavior and the absence of rules, and that seeks to elevate in your gaze and the rising standards. One need think about the Bible story that don't simplify this role as layerness. Our legislators on administration mind, and the bands and dramatic tale illustrate why we need never make and when understanding. Similar to this book, the Professor Patterson don't just propose 12 rules and a theory history to bring in to Brown's Noland of the many few illustrations applying why to the best rule is not ultimately abstract use both in trying to facilitate your goals and making in fuller, thriller lives. The first time I met Jordan Peterson was September 12 in 2004, and in home of two mutual friends, TV product one Walden Wisberg and the medical interns Easter break is one birthday party. Hodaxed the Istera and the Polish immigration to who grew out in Soviet Empire when it was understood that many typicals were limits that casually questioning certain social arrangement philosophical ideas. And it could mean a big in trouble, but no hosting and luxuried in his own honest talk by. Having elegant partners that have developed the pleasure in saying that you're really in fraud and the earning authors the same. And the union bidding given and take, where the rollers was speaking your mind. The conversation turned on the political peoples in different political persuasions spoken one another, and then to looking forward it is. The minorities and inquiries and sometimes walking the opinions through explaining in often when didn't log. When Wigan, Hogan or more however had made in when loading or provoked when speaking his mind with the great instances than even we might have an instance. This was the best part of the parties, and this freakness, and there was embraces made in worth the provoking him. Meanwhile, stirring voices littered across rooms on the priest's bed toward, towards inside sinner, still listener. Throat explosion did make an atmosphere than less easy from company. They made in from the first explosions, laboratories logs, and making all and ever more pleasant become with the replies in the West Europeans, and the like on Steven Berg's Beckers. You always knew with and the one Belk, and when describing the balls and the parties in the native the Balkan novelist describing in the parties in native France, observing in that apparent single part always are really two. Under the first oars, the Gavorand was suffered the bored, the special person who would conform when you're the beauty and status. When only in every late hours, the aftermost gas and left was sharing the person persistent and open hand the logger replies. This is 30 years. Stara is Don't's parties is kind, we wars in the morning disclosing, and the element of the Megan son as we enter the run. One task and the silver weight and the little man and the hunter are ways to looking at potential public intellectuals who know how to spot people who can really talk in the front TV camera and who looking alternative because we often find the people's lay songs that you lay models from the physiology professor and from my one University of Toronto US fit view intellect and emotion that then. Don Dackney was the first to put Jordan Peterson in front of a camera and throat often is teaching in certain students because in a ways reading is playing. And they helped we liked the camera and that the camera liked them back. That afternoon, where was Legion table set outside in Berkes garden around this the gather the usual collection is filled in the ears and the location virtuals. The summit, however, the applying by using Zapparin and Bass underwear was new fell on the table with an Alberman stained cowboy boots, who was drinking when and keeping on talking. We keep on talking while the rest and we're playing musical chairs and keeping away from pigeons. Yeah, we're trying to remind table because this new addiction you're getting taste and interested. We had we had this all the habit speaking about the deepest question, however, was this the table. Most often the new accents were floating were just making small talk. Your would didn't small talk and we interval between. How to do know how the accents stir. Your I was to keep them the ones in a way used when and the more serious topics about nanoseconds. When you mind her and the question discourse in the parties and when profession and the professionals together but usually conversing the world and remain between two specialists and become and the big topic. When a corner was shepherded with the ruling group, it was often not without someone praying. But this Patterson, fraud eroded, didn't come across Pellant. He had an a turns of kid who just learning something new hadn't ensured. We might be a song on the should before learning how diligent addiction can become that they wrote something interesting so mirror to others. There was something boyish the cowboy and the brown subjection for having grow up together in some small town. Your family that had been thinking about the very same problems of human existence along. Patterson wasn't really in networking in one hadn't sufficed. Conventional shops had been Harvard profession was gentleman from we did say, and when the blooding landlord rurals 1916 in the sort of ways, but everyone listening with fascination on stares faces. Because it was factoring at the rising questions of concern to everyone at the table. Where was something freeing about being with one person learned? They speak in a social united way. His thinking was the motoric and the same in the thinking about the motor cortex to think about the motor also on the run fast and work properly. To get and thought not inquired meaning about servants prior to fraud and the troubling note new like the many academics who taken the flower and they hold it and someone challenge your correct and win we really not seem to like it. We didn't repair anything. We'd say I can't in the focus away. Yeah, and the blow and with an involuntary wagon and had an overclock something. All I did himself and overrising, we applied and big and so on. The bigly show and another size in the sun. And the back and clear that think and throw and the problem was for real and diagnostic process. One could not be sucking another even shall think about him. For the Patterson was extremely practical. These examples were filled with the application in everyday life, business management, and how to make a fortune And you another specific case in the relation education, creation the online writing the project out keeping mentoring students dropping the school, getting the kingdom psychology as a strength in self, the way showed in resistance about the past and the present and future. In a way, especially in the folding mind runs in the private types who you come from farm. They were learning about nature and who over a small town and having work in the one hand to making things, and spend a long periods outside in the horses elements, Mandu work quickly in liking this philosophical and some that not newborn parents for one hated education heightened education and periods for that reason sometimes taken for granted through and not in the ending in self, but simple life, strength, device, and career advantage. They're different, self-made, and the unit hands-on, and they are eating barley and the less precious than many and their big city peers who increase in spend and life and are manipulating symbols and the computers. Which is cowboy psychologist said they care about in the flow, why and the might and some might and help from someone. We become friend and the psychiatry and the psychoanalysis how to love the literature. It was drawn and because we're in the clinical whole Wilson had given himself and great books education. And the who you not love and the soul for Russian novels, philosophy, and the ancient mythology. But who you also seemed that the when most concerned in this but we also did illuminating in essential searching the personality and the temperament. And he also studied neuroscience, and the Freud trained behavioralist and the profilist drawn psychoanalysis, and the Freud focused dreams and archetypes and the persistence and childhood. And we adult, and we role defense in rationalization in everyday life. We also know Tulare being one member of Research and Orientation Department of Psychology University of Toronto, who also keeps in clinical patients. In my visit, your conversation began with the banter and a laughter, and it was Melton Patterson from Alberta when with teen aid in the right in the moving football. Welcomeness come. The housing had been gutted by Tammin, his wife, and when self-interned parents and most fascination in locking middle class in a home had seen. When it had in some cavern masking about proportions you and overlooking had in collection original socialist Reagan palace palatines and the land in the clear communists and commissioners the USSR. Not too long after Soviet Union, most in the Western world and the person began pushing and the propaganda for is long online. Fighting is Leon's in Soviet revolutionary spirit commonly fueled every single hour. The salons in the bathrooms and the planned in the weir and the because in Jordan hadn't one toleration sympathies because and wanted the women in himself something new ever showed me ever to forget. That over 100 million people here moved in name to utopia. I token getting used the semi hundred thousand declared by delusion that hadn't practically destroyed making, but it was seen by is a wonderful unique position Taman who was a win, who embraced and encouraging the unusual need expressions. And there's planning providing visitor with the first window to, for example, Jordan constrain about human capacity for evil the name of good. and the psychological mastery of self-deceptions. And the story was shading that there were also wars and spending discussion what's in mind in Cowler's problem. The human capacity for evil for the sake of evil. The joy some people take in destroying others. Captured famously in 17th century. English poet John Milton in Paradise Lost. And wielding having the Tia and the kitten underworld walled by world collection visual maker and a question beyond simplest ideology, left and right, and the mistakes in the after while and with nothing particular about thinking and sticking. This kind of family and loses in lesson reading with chosen one's picture overing as just leaving the world was some place. In Jordan Force Nolan book before the one Maps of Milling, we stand beyond universal themes in the world mythology, and the explosion had cultures, creative stories happen in graven ultimately map the cows intro wish intro bird, the cows into ever you know exploring territory the emotion travels the outside the peaceful and within. Combining evolution, the narrow size of emotions from the best junk and some Freud, and the great and for Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, and Solden, and Line, Neuron, Piaget, and Frau Franklin, and the maps of Million Bush and two decades in the Jordan Weiland are in understanding who humans bringing the human brain and in the archetypal situations crisis and now daily must facing something and they understand. Their brilliance in book and in demonstration whole halted situation evolution DNA, your brains and emotion and silent stars and the shoulders star survival because they still provide guidance in the line with stranded and avoidable One of many virtues of the book you are reading now. It is providing and the Blacks working because Jordan was working upon psychology and were front button fundamental because no matter how different Janice and the Brian's were experience we all have an ideal with the is why many roles this book begin based on maps of meaning. Where having 11 having an element of university of them. Maps of Milling was part of the Jordan organized awareness as well teenager growth in a open mission in the Cold War. In the Cold War, what most Kingdom Sam and the Virgin Blown Planet Defender various identifies. We felt had understand how you could be that people would sacrifice everything indefinitely, whenever it was, and then felt in have understanding the logic is that Tauran regimes variant in same behavior. Killing other citizen in the maps of mailing. This is against the book and the matters accusation readers of almost worry and ideology matter who painting it through that end. Ideologies are simple ideas discussed in the science or philosophy that purpose applying complexity word often remains that will perfect. The ideological peoples who represent you know who and making the world better place. Before they taking their one cows in, thus Hubris, of course, and that the most important elements in the book in your host order first, and the Jordan provides practical advanced and who this ideological substance for true knowledge, and the ideological are always dangerous when they come to power, because the simplement approach dimensions complex existence for more when the sociological cooperation fail and fly ideologies blame to themselves, but while all who the throw the simplification. Another great and Professor Lewis and Feuer, and whose ideology and ideologies observes ideologies and hetero evaluator stars they propose having supplies eliminate narrative psychological richness. Communism is brought in from history and children of Israel and in Egypt when they self class ration percentuals leader like in the leading and the goals abroad life amongst itself and the leads in the levels promises land. To understand the ideology, Jordan reading extends about only Soviet Golan but Holocaust and the Russian Nazism. I had never before met person, but Christian in my generation who want torment happened in Europe days, and who had studied deep in for further survivant Austin's. My grandmother was middle-aged. They stood face to face with Dr. Joseph Mengele and the Nathan Piscan, and who conducted unspeakable, unspeakable cruel experiments with physicists. We and she survived Auschwitz, and be scrolling in the order joined in the elder grey and weak, and try sleeping and try sipping enter with younger people. She avoided the gas chambers and second time and from foods and for I die and we on vivid motion stand concentration camp and the walking death and they relate to this because years after becoming friends and Jordan Walden taken classical liberal and stand free speech and were accused by left-wing extremism being and right-wing bigot. Then let me say, with you moderate and casing summon the best froze, I couldn't have a simplified on negligence. I have to family in the history in my developed zone radar and the underwater recognizing kind of person with the comprehension tools and God good will encourage combat and Jordan Peterson that person. My one certification with the modern political science and attempting to understand the rising as totalitarian and the prejudice was a major factor in this is my supplement in studying of political science with the student young colonels, projections, physical analysis, and the regressive potentials groups psychology and the psychiatry and the brain. Jordan still shed of the political science to similar seasons. With this important parallel Anderson didn't always agree to answers. Thank God. But almost always agreed in the questions. Your friendship was dawn and gloom, and heaven made an habitation of fellows people, professors, and occasional university, and so attended with which were always packed, and saw that no millions have the science, and only brilliant often days in public speaker was is best written like a jazz artist. The timer assigned the price when we just use a stewie stitch to be breakingly systematic summary of serious science study. We was master helping new student become more reflective than taking themselves in book and ever writing. I gave vivid example from clinical patients was self-refined, everyone is vulnerable and made in fascinating links between evolution, the brain, and the relation stories in the world where students were targeting evolution and the religion simplify apology opposed. We showed in the stance in Buddha we showed in the stance stories and journey evolution hero mirror survival task Anton's clemency wisdom and discussing the difference between sexes average and was able show who there's stray avoid why and served. Alright, thank you for listening. I'm stopping now. I will learning tomorrow. Alright, thank you for listening.